Hi there, Nico from Green Space, here with Bujianna. We're visiting her because she's doing something quite unique in this area of Lusaka that she's living in, sorry. Do you want to kind of explain what you are doing here?
Okay, so we have a synthropic demonstration site. Well, let me say it's a regenerative demonstration site because we have more than one strategy that we're employing. But I've had this place for maybe 20 years or so, but I've only been back for the last 20 months. When I was coming back, I had ideas of putting up a housing block and everything, but as I was flying in, because I hadn't been back home for a long time, but I was flying in over Lusaka, my heart dropped. Because flying back was always a good thing because I would see the green. All I saw was brown and dead. My heart dropped. I couldn't put into words what I saw. It was just, you know, when they say that Zambia is one of the countries with the fastest tree cutting, deforestation, it's just like until you see it, it's just like, oh my God. Anyhow, I digress. So when I came, there was no way I was going to put up anything else other than do my part in replanting those trees. So, and then at the time, I had heard about syntropics and all that in the States, but when I came, it just seemed like it married into exactly what I wanted to do, because I think it's all about having some form of agency. If I can grow 50%, 60% of my own food, it just changes the discussion, right? It just, and now with everything going on, being able to be food secure, I think it's very important. Yeah. But can we do it in wherever we're at? Because everyone has an idea of, okay, I need to have 3 acres and all that stuff. No, just start where we're at. So that's really what we're trying to demonstrate, and how much can we really do with whatever whatever space you have. So basically, that's what we're trying to do. And everything we do, we kind of have to live with nature, so we have to give back. Like with syntropics or planting the water, we rainwater harvest, we have stones as opposed to pavers, because you want to recharge. If I'm going to take water out, I should be putting water back in. Yeah. And a lot of people think, oh, but it only rains for a few months, why would you water harvest? Do you know that within an hour or so I can fill 5,000 liters of my 5,000 liter tank from the rain? So can you imagine if I have my water, even if it doesn't rain for a week, I have 5,000 and I can replenish. But even then, we're not letting the water just run off. We're able to sink it in. So it's just incorporating a few things that it's very common knowledge. Everyone can do this, but we just choose not to. Yeah. And the weather, we are where we are because of our actions. It's not an accident that we have extreme weather and all that stuff. We are part of it, so we have to be part of the solution. And it's not out there, it's with everybody. So it's kind of, you know. Yeah. Yeah. So
you came back 20 months ago. What kind of size of plot do you have here? Sorry.
So it's 2,000 square meters.
2,000 square meters.
It's basically 4 plots in one. Yeah.
And you've started with the planting of the trees and getting the syntropic system setting up. Have you started to see produce back from those plantings already?
Yes. Well, we've had apples. A lot of apples, papaya, but even when we take a tour, you see that we have our cassava, we're harvesting some of our cassava, our granadillas. There's always food on site, right? Granted, it's still in its early stages, but it's growing. We're definitely seeing this. I always have vegetable. It may not be my favorite vegetable, but I always have, because we like things like calendula, it's very good for ground cover. Yeah. Right? And because of the extreme temperatures that we have, mulching with dry matter is a challenge because it just is eviscerated in a very short time. So living ground cover is usually the way to go, especially when you're beginning your syntropic garden. But then also the other thing you have to keep in mind is we're a burn culture. So mulching with dry mulch is actually a danger if you have neighbors close by, because they're going to burn it. Yeah. And once it gets into your garden, you're in trouble. Yeah. So we're definitely harvesting or starting to see the harvest going. And the thing about it too, the soil was also very degraded. So as the soil improves, we're seeing that the things are growing faster, and then you kind of have to learn the soil, because not everything you want to grow grows. Yeah. The soil.
Yes, it's a learning curve as to what limits do we have on what basically our climate, what we can grow here.
What we can grow. Yeah, and then also depending on the stage in your syntropic, I mean the pioneer, you know, it really just depends where you're at. So, but yeah, we're definitely seeing. We actually sell some stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
You're already, after 20 months, able to start creating some level of economic return from it as well?
Yes, yes.
Oh, nice.
Because not only are we doing this in Tropic Garden, but we also are doing biogas, so we have biodigesters.
Okay. So multiple different kind of inputs into the system.
Yes, because we're organic, so we need a consistent source of organic fertilizer that we have control over.
Yeah.
So hence we have our biodigesters. But not only do we need it for the fertilizer, because we're using biogas to cook, right? So if we use biogas to cook, I don't care what Zesco's doing. And I'm not really affected by the price of gas, because even the price of gas has gone up. It's not cheap.
Every month now.
Every month. So if the electricity is more expensive, the gas is more expensive, the millimere is more expensive, you got to have some space that you have some form of control.
Yeah.
So this is basically what, you know.
So have you found in terms of the system that you're creating and that is and nurturing at the moment, have you found that it has actually buffered you against some of the inflation and price increases that we've been seeing lately?
Yeah, because I don't buy, well, I haven't planted my tomatoes yet, but I don't buy vegetables unless I just want something different. But I can always find it in the garden, right? Tomatoes, when you do grow them, especially in the, fence line, they do very well. I never have to go and buy tomatoes. So that helps. Like for a family, the millimere is 350 or 300. It helps if you don't have to go and then buy vegetables too, right? So, and even fruit, from our passion fruit, from our papaya, we don't have to buy all that. Soon we won't have to buy bananas because we have tons of bananas. So it's just making sure that you're food secure. Yeah. So yeah.
And okay, you've mentioned fruits and vegetables. What about protein? Are you able to incorporate protein sources into this?
Absolutely. We have chickens, so we have eggs on a consistent basis, and we're getting our goats. We'll get our rabbits. We'll get our cow. Yes, we will. We will. But we want to make sure that it's a full farm. Yeah. It's definitely a full farm. I mean, obviously, it's not a grazing cow or grazing. This is a dairy. Yeah. Right? Because once you have protein, you're good to go, basically.
And then what do you find in terms of the amount of effort for the management of it? Because when you're talking about so many systems coming in, it sounds like there would be quite an intense management need to make everything work together. Have you found that it's increasing, or have you kind of hit a plateau where the management effort you're putting in is actually then paying off more dividends than what you find that you're having to put in?
Well, in the beginning, it's a lot of management because you're setting it up. But once the systems are running, it's pretty straightforward. And then I think also the other thing that you have to keep in mind is you have to make the processes as automated as possible from the beginning. Yeah. Right? Because labor is a challenge, 9 out of 10. But I have to be able to, even when there's nobody, be able to do everything. So I have to make it simple enough that I can do it. Yeah. Right? But I can't do everything to manage time, but you have to make it as automated or as simple as possible, because if it becomes too labor, you're just not going to do it. It'll be too much. Yeah. And it becomes a challenge then, because when you're not there, it won't work. So, so
even with automation, but keeping that automation simple as possible.
Can we simplify the process as much as possible? Because even like with our chickens, we have deep mulch, right? Because we have a small space, so I don't have too much space where I can have compost piles going, right? So it's deep mulch, so they're doing a job too. They have 2 jobs. They are first line of defense for those pesky termites. But then, but then also their manure goes into the garden. So by the time we're taking the manure out, we can either compost it or can go straight as cover. So everybody serves a dual purpose. Yeah. So.
Is that kind of idea of one waste product from one system can go into another system essentially, and ideally close the loop?
Close the loop.
Have you been able to close that loop mostly, or are there still a few areas where things seep out in the moment?
Yeah, there's still a few areas where things are seeping out, because it's figuring out what really works, like balancing how much the chickens are costing me versus what I'm making out of the chickens, right? But then that also just it's a learning curve because also you're trying to do it organically. So you're trying to figure out how do I get them to a healthy stage where I don't have to give them anything. And so it's really trying to figure that out. And then I don't really necessarily come from a farming background. Some of these things I learned the hard way. I'm like, oh, shoot, I shouldn't have done that. But
Well, but those mistakes will always stay with you then at the same time. It's a proper learning experience that you will then pull back from to then say, okay, I did this once, now I can go and do this. And,
it's like even with the bees, because we have bees, right? After we harvested, they took off. I didn't know why they took off. So when we went to look inside, the ants were giving them hell, right? Because they were on a big tire, because it's a concrete hive, because we have termites. So it would just be a disaster with wood. Especially if it's on the ground. Maybe if our trees grow bigger, then we can put the hives higher. But anyhow, so we took it out, we cleaned it out. When we put it back where it was, the bees came back. But then as soon as they came back, they left. What's going on? The bees came back. I mean, the ants came back. So we had to build a concrete slab to put it up on top and clean it up. They came back again. And then we used diesel in the edge of the platform so they wouldn't come in. But then I noticed that the bees were going in there thinking it's water and dying. So I had to put the water on top and trying to figure out. So I figured, okay, then I'm going to put like a dam line and make a MacGyver thing. The ants figured out how to get on top of it. Oh, this is not going to work. Took that on. So I decided to just put the water on top, and I think bees figured out, okay, this is not food. The water is not food. The water is up here. So now we're at like an impasse. So keeping the ants away and the bees are back. So it's that kind of cycle that you don't know. If you just come back, okay, I'm going to do bees, you're excited. Did you consider the ants? How are you going to, it's kind of all those things because...
Have you been able to find that there are resources that you could look up or at least learn from on more Zambian experiences? Because I know usually those are pretty thin on the ground.
Yeah, not so much.
Not so much. So literally kind of paving the way as you're going forward.
Not so much. Because everything we're learning from other people in other parts of the continent, but it doesn't always match with our weather and our conditions. So it's learning. There's not that much. If you look up whatever you look up, there's very few people doing synthropics in Zambia or doing it successfully, or even if they are, there are very few people documenting. So you can go and say, they did this. So it's kind of like everyone is in, I guess, beginning stages, or we're not sharing enough, maybe.
No, it's definitely one of those kinds of things. I think it's also very new. There's not really many people who've kind of adopted and taken it on. When they look at a space, they want to maximize, say, their production of usually one thing, that more kind of traditional agriculture. How much maize can I grow in this space, rather than saying, well, if I break it up and plant, other food crops and still do maize, what's that kind of overall harvest am I going to get?
The overall harvest, and also the fertility of the land. It's a long-term gain versus short-term gain when you are doing a monocrop. It's just But a lot of people don't want to do that. Or even in small spaces, everybody's thinking they have to be out there in big, vast people, but they don't start where they are. It's right here. Even if I have a little corner, I can have a vertical, which is the other thing we're doing, is a vertical garden. Because I've noticed things don't always grow. The vegetables don't always do well in the food forest. So we have to have a space where we can grow it vertically and relieve the bug pressure, and I don't have to spray them. So it's just, thinking how we can maximize the space.
What are the kind of views of your neighbors? Because obviously you're doing something that is completely counterintuitive to what most of your neighbors are going to do. Have they been expressing interest? Have they?
From my helper, they think they don't understand what's going on. What kind of craziness you got going on in here? Because either they are seeing a whole bunch of wood chips or just stuff that's going in that's kind of, I doubt there's anyone in my neighborhood, at least not in a residential area, that have biodigesters, right? So, when we're bringing in manure, what's going on here? But it's that whole thing. In time, they will see the difference. Because I know some of my neighbors have been here more than 5 years or so, but you can't tell by the trees. It's still really barren and really hot. So sometimes it's also not, just haven't thought of it. that way, right?
Yeah.
You haven't been exposed to being able to do things differently in a way that it's mutually beneficial for the environment, for you, and just because everyone would either put pavers, it's like a jail cell.
Yeah.
So,
Well, but I think, as you mentioned at the very beginning when we started talking, that idea of putting up rental properties.
Yeah.
When somebody says, "Oh, I've got this plot," that kind of initial, what benefit can I get back from it? You know, goes straight to more of an economical one first and foremost, rather than it being something that is actually going to pay back other dividends, rather than just purely cash or.
But you know, when you think about it, at least in my opinion, rental properties, as interesting and cool as it sounds, it's actually the worst thing you can do because the return on investment is so long. It's over 30 years before you can return, right?
Yeah.
And if you have renters, 9 out of 10 you have to fix, and it's not always, it's part of the investment portfolio, but it can't be all because it costs so much and it takes so much longer to get return on.
Yeah.
But agriculture is a way to go if you do it right.
Yes.
You don't get a drought.
Well, but we do have to kind of, weather the ups and downs effectively. But
True.
it sounds like you've also been setting up a system that can weather that much better than consistent or conventional agriculture.
Absolutely, yeah.
Did you have a plan for your property before you came back, or did that start when you kind of arrived on the ground?
Well, I had the plan before I came back. So, like the house was like the shell; it wasn't really finished. I managed to finish that when I came back, like make it livable when I came back, because the idea is I was always coming back. So, the house or the shell was there at least. But the thing about it, I would do it differently. I would understand more about in my location, about placement, about orientation and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Usually we're just looking at maximizing the space of it, right? But now, because it was the first thing we put, I still have to build like an awning or a gazebo up front because we face west and the sun just beats the front of the house.
Yeah.
So if you don't put orientation in mind, you have to then pay more to cool the house. If you had thought about it a little bit more, then you kind of work with nature as opposed to against nature. So that's one thing. So the house, thankfully, was a shell, but still, the challenges of doing stuff and you're not present, you're always going to have to come and do some corrections here and there. But in terms, and that's the other thing, in terms of doing corrections, because we use gray water, right? So because some of the things we're doing after the fact, we have to come break stuff or put, if it's done, if you've thought about it, even though everything will be put into the plan as you are building as opposed to coming to break it down. Had I come earlier, I probably wouldn't have had one, so we only have one sockaway for this house, but not for the others because we're not doing that anymore. Because I understand where we're a flood area, right? And clay soils. Everyone has a sockaway, right? And then everyone has a borehole, So, it's being able to understand the environment, but then you really can't control it in such a small space because I can't control who has a sockaway close to me because they're close by. So taking all those things into mind, if we thought about it, we'd do it differently, right? Because the biodigester, then we're not contaminating our own water that people are then drinking because they're pumping it out. And I doubt too many people are testing, because once you test, then you have to pay to clean it. So if you don't know, you just think it's cool. But anyhow, in terms of building the biodigesters, because we have two. We have a portable one and we have one that's, like a 17 cubic meters and a 14 one. It's a little eccentric. It might not be what the everyday person would do, but they can definitely do the portable one. Right? It can be sized depending on the house. And in a small space, they've come up with ways to make it actually smaller and more effective. Because a lot of people have to then pump their soccerwares out because they get flooded because it's too much of a water. So it's like we're not really thinking about where we're living and what we're putting into it and how it's affecting us. So if they're flooding, it means they're flooding the whole water. It's a little bit of a challenge.
Many people doing that essentially will contaminate
everybody's water space. So that's the challenge. And so figuring out what works in your area would be the best, right?
Yeah.
It's easier if you're able to have the opportunity to go on the ground and observation. Permaculture, first rule of permaculture is observation, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we don't usually do it because we have an idea, we haven't observed anything, we just want to marry our idea with.
Yeah.
But anyway, so probably the portable one, and it really, the portable one is probably maybe like $1,000, right? The bigger one is a little more than that, right? But this is where architecture and science and everything could work together if they were talking. 9 out of 10, if you go to an architect and you say you want a biodigester, what are you talking about? Just dig a because they they're not aware of it, or it's not a field that they're playing in. So it's very difficult to find people who know how everything relates. Yeah. Right? How I can put my biodigester in so I can size it to a regular residential house, and how do we fit that all in? 9 out of 10, you are pioneering what you're doing, and the cost can be a little crazy because it all has to do with pitch and everything. If you know you're going to have a biodigester, the way they do the piping and everything has to work together. Otherwise, it's
you have to put more energy into the system.
But it's getting better. I think more people are getting exposed, especially with all these energy shortages that we're having. People are realizing you have to do it differently. We can't go on doing the same thing, especially when we have the resources every day that we're flushing. And then in terms of site, because it's 4 plots, we've really done most, or if not all, the building can fit to 1 plot. Yeah. Right? So three of the plots are the garden. So the garden takes more room than the housing. Yeah. Because, I don't spend that much time. And lucky enough, we have the space. If it was smaller, I'd probably go up. Yes. Right? Which I notice a lot of people don't do. We just expand all this, build out, and we don't even have space for the car. I guess maybe we don't think we're going to have a car in the future, but whatever. But so yeah, and in terms of finances, it was not the cheapest because it's a new idea. Yeah. Right. But long term, I don't worry about what a lot of people, because not only did we have biodigesters, we have solar. So.
So you're talking that there's numerous smaller amounts of savings that can at least add up and give you a bigger saving in the long run.
Yes, because unfortunately, being green, the entry fee to be green is very high. It pays dividends along the way, but just trying to go green, it's very difficult. It's not the easiest thing to go green because at least now everybody is making killing because everyone needs a solar because they're in the dark half the time. Yeah. But once you get it and it's sized correctly, you don't have to then be worrying so much about, is my food going to spoil in the fridge, because but how many people with regular fridges, stuff is spoiling every day. Now you can't even go and shop for more than a few days because you're not going to have power. So if you add up all the losses that you're getting because of the systems that we have, in the first year you're definitely feeling. After that, then it's just, why didn't I do this earlier?
Yeah, the tsunami hits you first, and then afterwards, the little waves are much less of a nuisance. So you're saying you had 4 plots. Yes. And so the house is sitting on one, I assume.
On 1 plot, yes.
And then the other 3 have been developed with the synthropic garden and the other kind of add-ins, like the biodigesters you were saying.
Yeah, biodigesters.
And did you kind of have a plan for that when you first started, or... Was there, so you came back with the idea of wanting to do something different. Yeah. You were thinking of syntropic before you even came back. Did you wait to get on the ground and observe kind of what things were, or had you kind of started the plans even as you were on the airplane coming back?
Yeah, because certain of the plans, I was always going to grow. So things like my moringa and most of my apples went in first, right? That's why the syntropic lines are not perfect, because some of the plants were planted in first. There was always going to be a garden. Yeah. But then I just switched to what kind of garden I'm going to have, because it made sense in terms of orientation and, then I built it out that way. But I was always going to have a garden. I should probably share pictures of how it looked like first and what it looks like now, because it was kind of desert. Just like it was, it looks very different.
Almost empty, sterile backyard in some cases after the building of the house.
Yeah, except building of the house, because typically people would have like, on this size, maybe a pool, but it just seems like a wasted, wasted resource for me. It would have to be bigger because it has to have dual purpose. It's just, everyone has to put in their work.
Yeah.
From the chickens, everyone has to put in their work, But yeah, so, and then with the dairy cow, we're thinking, it seems crazy, but we need a dairy cow for two purposes. We have biodigesters. I don't have the car to be going to pick up manure, and I don't like the smell of my car when I pick up manure. But it would just be easier if it was always on site. Because we're using the gas to cook, so we have to constantly feed it. So if I think of the long-term cost of it, it makes sense to have the dairy cow. Because even that manure, we use it in our, the bioslurry is our fertilizer.
Yeah.
The dairy we can always sell, but we build up for a big farm. This is like our nursery, so we want the lessons to be up close and personal before we extend to the bigger farm. Yeah.
So you're still working through the issues by the sounds of it.
Yeah, definitely working through. And then also, because the reality is we still have to live and pay bills. So it's trying to figure out, how do I do all this and still make a living? Because, when my daughter needs school fees, what am I going to say? We're doing synthropics? No, we pay the fee.
Yeah.
So it's kind of trying to figure out, how do we make it work, right? How do we make it work,
And I assume that is actually part of the challenge that you also like, is then kind of figuring out what can be done to, first and foremost, feed into other systems, but also allow you then to continue living at a certain level that you would expect for yourself.
Yes. It gives you, when it's working the way it's supposed to work in my mind, then, it gives you the freedom to do what you want, but then also do it to a level where it gives you the kind of life that you can provide the life that you want to provide for your kids, and also you have employment. But then, most importantly, you're impacting the environment and leaving it better than you found it.
Yeah.
Right? I think I don't understand how we can just take, and what did you expect?
Yeah. When you get slapped in the face by a drought or whatever.
Yeah, it's like, what did you expect? Even, let's think of the heat with El Nino. Around September, October, we knew this. That were heat El Nino, I was panicking, getting sick. I literally was really sick. I thought I was going to die because I was stressing out so much. Until I had to say, look, get the oxygen mask and put it on yourself. Forget about everybody else, because they'll figure it out for themselves. Because I'll die in the process. Everyone will still be okay. But I knew that I needed to go and get we have huge reservoirs at the farm.
Yeah.
Like 3 by 3, 15 by 10 by 3, 10 by 10 by 3, and huge. And we finished this just in time before the big rains. So we captured as much of the water as we could. Guess what? There's still water in my reservoir. We don't have trees. It's still open, but we don't have trees. That's the power of planting the rain, right? Was capturing the water. It wouldn't matter what was going on, because we'd still have water in there, because the land, the earth is the biggest cistern or reservoir that you can have if we plant it in. But we just,
yeah, we build so it runs off as quickly as possible.
And then we're still doing it. Because there's still nice roads being built, and they still have these huge, deadly canals at the side of the roads that take out the water. So do we not see what's going on, or is there no connection between being part of the problem? So it just, and then my frustration with other people trying to solve the problem is really why I'm doing because I find that people talk a lot. They go to all these meetings, they come seminars, we're doing the same thing. And
yet we never get anything done after them.
So it's kind of like, okay, it can be done. I know it can be done. I'll prove that it can be done. I won't wait for you, because you're not going to get it done.
And I find in Zambia there, as you say, there's a lot of talk, but there's very little to show for it in the end. And actually then getting out and showing is probably the best solution. Because then people can come and see and have an example to point back to.
And then, and if we can replicate it, that would be super. But then, because I can go on and on. But here's one thing that always hits me. We never see the charcoal trucks going out. They're always coming in, right? Right. So who's responsible for deforestation? It's the urban centers, because we are buying it, right? So if we don't change how we're doing things, we can do as many tree growing exercises as we want out there. That's not the problem. The trucks are coming in because we are the consumers of it. So if you consume less or we consume differently, we have an impact on that. But
Yeah, we're not going to solve the charcoal problem today, unfortunately.
Breathe, breathe. I just have to breathe
Yeah.
and do what I
But
can.
doing what you can, reducing your need for anything like charcoal, even firewood, by doing biogas is a massive step
Yeah,
forward,
yeah.
effectively.
Yeah.
And you can then show how it actually benefits you in the long run by saving you quite a bit of money on that side
True.
of it. And being able to cook if there's no Zesco, and you don't
Yeah.
have to use electricity, is
Yeah.
another massive one too. So,
Absolutely, absolutely.
you know, all of these kinds of things feeding in, I think, is definitely the way moving forward. But as you were saying, there is a lot. It is a steep learning curve.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
the more you observe, the more you plan. I suppose the less steep it's going to be. But
Yeah.
there's always going to be, you know, spanners in the works, no matter how you look at it.
It's
You
true.
know, and there's always going to be an adaptation element that we still need to do.
True.
Because our situation here in Zambia is going to be different, even within Lusaka.
True.
You say
True.
you have a high water table. Where I am, our water table is much lower, effectively. So I might not face certain challenges that you do,
Exactly.
but I will then have different challenges on account of that.
Yeah, yeah. I don't envy you when it's time to dig the borehole because you have to go so deep to go. It's just, but you know, and little things like even recycling bottle, like our bottle wall here, it's not
Yeah.
done, but when you drive around, you see so much bottle. There's so much we can do to recycle it.
Yeah.
So we're trying to show that, you know, you don't have to break everything. You can reincorporate, reuse, and
Yeah.
just be more thoughtful with whatever we're doing, because at the rate we're going, you just see heaps of glass. It's
Yeah.
not even, they don't even bother to separate it or put it so it can be broken down, and then probably you reuse in construction because it is sand.
Yeah.
But we're just very wasteful with what we have. If we're wasteful with what we have, it doesn't matter how much we get.
Yeah.
We're going to waste it all because we have no value or concept for whatever it is that we have. So, you know, that's my 2 cents.